Hi, namaste, and thank you for tuning into this video. It's been about a week since my last upload, and it was kind of a bomb that I dropped on everyone who was kind of wondering why I left the cult of Nithyananda, why I had stayed silent about the abuses I faced there for about 9 years of being a part of that community, and what exactly was happening to the kids in the school that convinced me it was time to completely disengage from that cultic group and restart my life in the real world once again. So that video, I'm really grateful to see, has met mostly with positive feedback. It's almost overwhelming, the volume of comments that have come up underneath it from a lot of people who are born Hindus living in India, who are saying basically that people born into Hinduism knew Nithyananda was fake all along and didn't get sucked into his cult. And I felt like making a video to address some of the questions asked by many of those born Hindus who have asked, why do so many Western people fall into the trap of this fake God man? Why do we fall for his, self-aggrandizing agenda and get sucked into his mind control mechanism? And it's interesting because this is something I've reflected on when I look back on my journey, and something so many of my friends tell me they can't believe in retrospect that they got sucked into a cult like that, because first and foremost, nobody ever deliberately joins a cult. It's not like somebody came up to us recruiting and said, hey, we belong to this wonderful new cult in India. Come worship a human being and recruit all of your friends and give up your life for it. It's not like we deliberately marched in knowing that we were going to sacrifice our independent thinking skills to become a pawn used by a narcissistic psychopath. We all went in for the same reason anybody joins any movement. We were promised the answer to the questions we had at the time. We were told that life there is going to be much, much better than life in the outside world. And we were told that by volunteering our services and donating our money and giving our time, we were going to be helping the world. So at the time that I found Nithyananda, I was already hugely inspired by Sanatana Dharma. I was already really fascinated by the world of Hinduism. I believed Hindu gods and goddesses were beautiful. I had very good friends in Vancouver, a couple named Varsha and Nitin who owned a bookstore there, who really got me my start in tarot card reading by letting me teach a little class about tarot at their store. And through them, I was introduced to Ganesha and what it is to do puja and what it is to connect with deities on a personal level, not just as archetypes, but as beings. And so it's not like Nithyananda was my introduction to Hinduism. I was already, I kept a Ganesha Murti in my apartment even before I knew Nithyananda, and I offered it sweets on a regular basis, and I felt connected to Kali Devi, who I had seen in visions as a kid. When I came to know about Nithyananda, I had prayed for enlightenment, and unfortunately, I fell victim to something that a lot of people in the anti-cult movement call faulty attribution. And faulty attribution means when something coincidental happens, we automatically assume that it's a miracle. And instead of feeling like it's a great coincidence, we attribute that miracle to whoever claims credit for it. So I'll give an example of faulty attribution. When I started coming to the Nithyananda Center in Vancouver on a regular basis, there were moments in my life where, for example, the Kalpataru program, which was the first $200 paid program of Nithyananda's that I participated in, that program cost $200. And I remember making a decision when I found out the price of that program. I decided that if I made exactly $200 cash on my next day working at the tarot room, that was a sign from existence that Nithyananda is my guru and that I should attend that program. So lo and behold, it was the summer season, busy time, lots of people coming for tarot readings. when I made exactly $200 on my next workday, I faulty attributed. I made the wrong generalization and assumed that I made that money, and it was proof and a sign to follow Nithyananda. The New Age community is really falling victim to this faulty attribution in a major way. And you see it in stuff like the 1111 syndrome or Doreen Virtue's book about repeat numbers. A lot of people think that if they see certain numbers constantly coming up, that that's a sign that they should do this or they should do that, or it's a message from an angel or it's a message from a master. Now, I'm not saying that we never actually receive divine messages, because for sure people have legitimate, beautiful spiritual experiences. But a lot of the time, when we jump to conclusions and assume that something is telling us something else, we start to do away with our rational thinking skills, and instead we start to ride this wave of coincidences, surrendering control of our lives into some unknown factor. Now, when somebody is already doing that, which I was doing on a regular basis as a tarot card reader, when I came into the Nithyananda Sangha, this community of people worshiping the Guru Nithyananda, whenever I started to tell those people about miraculous things happening in my life, they all told me, this is a gift from Nithyananda. This is Swamiji talking to you. This is him making this happen for you. And that's how the brainwashing first started to take effect. Previously, I had always thought these little synchronicities were gifts from existence, gifts from the universe, gifts from my higher self, gifts from this, that, or the other. I usually attributed that to some divine higher dimensional being, and a lot of people do this. And suddenly I had a huge community of individuals all unanimously telling me these are miracles from their guru. So that's why it was so easy for me to fall into it and believe their guru was my guru. And suddenly, everything good that happened in my life, I felt was coming from him. And when I got to India, the entire lifestyle there was geared towards keeping people compliant and subservient to his agenda. We were told what time to get up in the morning. We started our day with physical exercise in the form of yoga, followed by worshiping him in the form of puja, followed by listening to his discourses in the form of satsang. And to my amazement, this is exactly in line with what psychologists refer to as making somebody vulnerable and receptive towards a mind control mechanism. A sleep deprivation, so making us get up really early. Physical exertion, getting us to do yoga as soon as we wake up in the morning. And then satsang, planting ideas in our minds once we're overtired, then physically tired and receptive. All of this was easy for us to fall into because it was painted in the colors of Hinduism. We were told this is traditional Hindu practice. We weren't told this is a cultic brainwashing being done to you. So for all of those people in India saying, why do Westerners fall victim to these fake swamis and fall victim to these traps? It's because first and foremost, there's a lot of magical thinking that goes on with regards to miraculous happenings. And instead of seeing them as coincidences, or instead of seeing them as gifts from higher gods and goddesses like Mahasadashiva in the cosmic form, we're told that these are directly happening because of the guru's human intervention. So a lot of people who have fallen victim to Nithyananda, who still feel that he is not a cult leader, that he's truly an avatar, a lot of the reasons they give for continuing to believe in him are these faulty attribution miracle models. A lot of very rational, educated, intelligent, well-intentioned people continue to support his fraud organization because they have anecdotal evidence in their lives of what they feel is proof for them that he has made great things happen for them. They'll attribute everything from a breakthrough in their yoga practice to a breakthrough in their relationships, and they'll give away their power. And instead of taking credit for working hard to achieve those goals, they will forget the effort that they put into it. For example, they don't consider the fact that they've started doing yoga for an hour every day, and that's why their body is more flexible, and that's why they're healing, and that's why they're more healthy. They'll think, wow, he's blessed me with this yoga, so he has given me this breakthrough. When we start to give away our inner independent thought and assume that all the good things in our life are happening because of someone else, anything that someone else starts to tell us, we will naturally be more receptive and more gullible to believe, because we don't want to lose that connection. We start to feel like we owe that individual something. If somebody comes up to you on the street and gives you $100, you'll be grateful. You'll feel so appreciative that they've given it to you. If somebody comes up to you on the street and steals something from you and then starts giving it back in little dips and dribbles and little bits here and there, you'll get mad, right? They've taken something from you, and you won't be grateful when they give little bits of it back. You'll feel like they've ripped you off. You want all of it back. What I want to share, the way I really feel about Nithyananda now, he didn't give me anything spiritually. He took away my self-sovereignty. He took away my gratitude for the miracles existence was giving, and made me feel as if I owed him something, because he claimed he was the source of all of those great things that happened. So when little tiny good things would happen here and there, while I used to feel grateful to him for that, I now recognize it's like he stole away my entire independent thinking skills. And why should I be grateful if he gave back little teeny tiny clicks or little teeny tiny realizations, when all the things he gives to his disciples are always self-serving towards his agenda, which is to recruit more followers, to gain more money, to gain more popularity, and ultimately to be rich and powerful. He claims that he is the source of Shaktis, of spiritual powers, when in reality, he's making people feel as if they could never have any kind of psychic realization unless it was given by him. He makes people feel like they could never get enlightened unless they're enlightened through his touch. And so when somebody is led through a process at one of his retreats, where they stare at a picture of his eyes for, hours on end, and then close their eyes and they see a vision, they never realize it could be as much mass hypnosis as it is what he claims the awakening of the third eye. As somebody who dedicated years of my life to his organization, it's actually really sobering and humbling in retrospect to look back and see that what I promoted for so many years was more likely mass hypnosis than an enlightenment experience. And it's especially sad for me to see so many of my close friends, people who I met along the way in that journey, feeling as if they have no independent existence outside of his cult. A lot of people are saying that they're not in a cult, they feel guru bhakti, they feel devotion to him. I want to clarify that I have absolutely nothing at all against Hinduism. Today is the first day of Navaratri, the 9 nights celebrating the goddess, the mother, Devi, in her various forms. I feel such a tremendous gratitude to that divine feminine energy that I've had really great experiences of when I was in India in various temples. I really love Hinduism. I'm not at all anti-Hindu. And it's ironic and it's annoying that the way they're trying to silence me in that organization is by spreading a false rumor saying that I'm anti-Hindu. I mean, they've made up really ridiculous lies about a lot of whistleblowers in the past. And sadly, I fell victim to a lot of the lies they told about a lot of those whistleblowers in the past because I chose to believe whatever Nithyananda told me. I didn't have that rational thinking capacity. So when people like Arti Rao and Lenin Karupan revealed the truth of Nithyananda's cultic agenda, when those people were called anti-Hindu elements, I assumed they were. Now that I myself am being called an anti-Hindu element, I realize, wow, they must have been telling the truth. And it's interesting because both of them were born Hindus. when it comes to this kind of inner realization, when we're looking back at something that we've done in the past through a new perspective, we have new information given to us, and we start to realize that what we did then was wrong. I find it's really good to make connections with other people who have gone through that same process or who are going through that same process. And it's been such a huge blessing for me as I'm coming out of the cult abuse that I faced in the Nithyananda organization. It's been such a beautiful gift and a beautiful blessing to be able to see the brave work done by those who have left Scientology, because there's a lot of parallels between these two communities. And I think I mentioned in my last video that it was seeing Leah Remini's series on A&E called Scientology in the Aftermath that I started to realize a lot of the things done to us in Nithyananda's community were abusive. We were regularly sleep deprived. We were regularly threatened with punishment if we didn't do what the group leader, Nithyananda, told us to do. We were regularly publicly humiliated and shamed in front of large groups of people if we failed to achieve one of the instructions he had given us, especially impossible tasks. And it's interesting to see how many people have spoken out against Scientology, and that they too, while they were going through that cultic abuse, they thought it was normal. It was rationalized as okay because they were in a group environment where everyone else around them was okay with it. It's so strange getting out of a cult, because as long as you're in that cult, you are adamant that you are not in a cult, that maybe other people are brainwashed but not you. That doesn't mean that you enjoy your life and that it's exactly what you would have chosen for yourself. One of the things I've learned from the ex-Scientologists is that stepping back for a moment from your experience and questioning if that's what you would have chosen from the beginning, if you had known that that's what it was going to be, would you have gone into it? You know, a lot of them say when they first read the Dianetics book, or they first went to an auditing session, or they first met a Scientology recruiter, if they had been told, you'll have to go into debt and mortgage your house and give up all of your assets and pay it to this group in order to clear new levels and get new information, if they had known that up front, they would not have gone into it. And yet once they got sucked in, it was easy to keep going in deeper and deeper and deeper, because they had disengaged from their previous community and changed their idea of their identity. The same thing happens exactly in the Nithyananda cult. I know a lot of people who are still on the fence or watching what those of us who have left are saying, and I just want to ask one question to those people who feel like they're half in, half out. They still kind of believe in Nithyananda, but they're not quite sure. Ask yourself, when you first started going to his gatherings, when you first got into it, would you still have been willing to get into it if somebody had told you this is going to take over your entire life? And if your parents or your friends or your children or your coworkers question it, would you still have gone into it knowing that you would be expected to disconnect from them completely and cut them out of your life? Would you still have gone into it knowing that you would eventually be expected to give up your identity and move full-time to the ashram, where you will be sleep deprived, where you will be forced to do manual labor, where you will see that kids are being beaten, but you'll be forced to lie about that on social media, where you'll see that a lot of your rights and freedoms as a human being are stripped away. You need to ask permission to go to a funeral outside, and usually that permission will be denied. Would you still have gotten into it if you had known going in that your life would be limited and controlled by people other than you? That's generally how you can recognize whether or not you're in a cult. If you find yourself starting to agree with things that you know are disagreeable, and you find yourself silencing that inner voice that's telling you, oh, wait a minute, this might be wrong. If you find yourself pushing aside your own moral compass in order to fulfill somebody else's agenda, no matter what agenda that might be, that's the sign that you are in a high control environment. You're in a cultic environment. And it's really unfortunate that so many well-intentioned people get in, because these kinds of cultic environments prey on individuals who want to do something good for the world. You don't get sucked into a cult if you are a really vehemently self-centered individual who doesn't care about others. It's easier to get sucked in if you want to bring enlightenment to the planet, or if you want to bring higher consciousness to others, you want to help people. Start to look in and see, are the actions of that cultic group actually helping anybody, or are they just trying to do damage control so that the cult can continue to exist? If a group is actually doing what they claim they're going to do, in the case of Scientology, that would be clearing the planet of engrams, of negative past experiences that hold people back from their higher potential. If they were actually doing that, whistleblowers like Leah Remini wouldn't have thousands of people lined up to appear on her show to talk about how that cult hurt them and destroyed their family and put them in debt. The same way with the cult of Nithyananda. Unfortunately, not as many people are willing to come forward and speak up, because one of the ways the Nithyananda cult silences dissenters is by making up blatant lies about them to try to discredit them. Those who actually know me find it laughable, but one of the things that this Nithyananda cult has done, they've made a claim, they've accused me of being a CIA agent who infiltrated their organization to poison their leader. They've accused me of being a member of the Catholic sect Opus Dei. They've accused me of raping people while I was there. They've accused me of starting my own cult. Now they're calling me a white racist person who's trying to be the hero of Hindus, and they've misspelled Hindus deliberately to make it look like I'm some kind of vigilante out on a mission to destroy a sacred religion. The truth of the matter is that I have a deep reverence and respect for Hinduism. I'm really grateful that I get to co-sponsor a Pratyangira Homa, this Navaratri in Chidambaram temple, with some of my friends, as a way of honoring the goddess and invoking that divine blessing to help us through this process of exposing a cult that is actually damaging Hinduism. It's no more Hindu. The Nithyananda cult is no more Hindu than a group like the Branch Davidians are a representation of Christianity, or the Jonestown people are a representation of Christianity. What the Nithyananda cult has done is hijacked the love and the care that a lot of people have for Hinduism and claimed that they are the owners of that sacred tradition, which they're not. I think there are something like over 1 billion Hindus on planet Earth, but less than 1% of those Hindus believe that Nithyananda is an incarnation of the Lord Shiva. So it's not an attack against Hinduism to attack his cult. It's actually something for the preservation of what's real Hinduism, to point out that his cult is not the deciding authority of what is or what isn't Hindu. So I just wanted to clear up a few of those questions that appeared under my last video, and also to say thank you so much to the community of people who have left Scientology for creating an open space where people leaving other cults don't need to be afraid to speak out and to come forward and to share our stories. I have felt so much love and so much respect from people who left Scientology, and especially to Ron Miscavige. He is the father of David Miscavige, who took over Scientology directly from L. Ron Hubbard. When L. Ron Hubbard died in 1986, he left Scientology to David Miscavige. And a lot of people who speak out against Scientology speak out against the corruption and the abuse that David Miscavige personally does to people and that he gives his consent for. So Ron Miscavige is David's own father, and he's one of the trailblazers in blowing the whistle on Scientology and calling it out and warning people not to get into that cult. And it's really cool that Ron has created his own YouTube channel where every week he interviews people who left Scientology so that he gives them a space where they can share their stories and just vent and talk about the things that Scientology did in their lives that have hurt them, as a public service. And I'm just really grateful because I commented under one of Ron's videos, and within a couple of days, his wife reached out to me and invited me to appear in an episode. So he interviewed me. We did the first interview for his show earlier today, and I'll put a link in the video description here for where you can go and watch that interview and subscribe to his channel, because next Sunday we're going to do part 2, and the Sunday after we're going to do part 3 of that interview series. So in today's interview, I shared with Ron the whole history of how I got caught up in the Nithyananda cult and how I rose to publicly the top of that cult as their top recruiter and the head of their social media team. In next week's installment, we're going to cover what made me leave, what I found out about that organization that convinced me it's actually a cult, not a spiritually enlightened community, and that the leader is definitely a narcissistic psychopath with sociopathic tendencies, and how I was able to free myself from that cult trap. And then the following week, Ron and I are going to go through a checklist of red flags to look out for if you feel you might be in a cult. So how can we recognize a cult as opposed to a community? And which similarities exist between the Nithyananda cult and the cult of Scientology? Which common practices and common abuses do both of those organizations perpetuate on unsuspecting people who innocently come in and join them and then don't realize it but get brainwashed? So I'm really excited for that interview series, and I'm grateful to those of you who have been supportive of my journey as I break free from the Nithyananda cult. And for all of you who are still on the fence, anybody who's feeling like it's time to get out, I'm here for you. Just leave me a comment or reach out to me on Facebook. We can get through this, and we will get through this, because the goodness that brought us into those cults will always prevail over the abuse we experience once we're sucked into them. And so that's all I wanted to share with you guys today. Happy Navaratri, Jai Shri Ma, glory to the goddess, and we'll see you next time. Bye.